Hey everyone, in today's lesson we will have a look at angles introduction. So we'll have a look at types of angles and also bisectors as well. So types of angles fall under two categories. We have angles at a point and we have angles in parallel lines. So we'll firstly have a look at angles in point, and then we'll have a look at angles in parallel lines, and then we'll move on to bisectors. So angles in a point, the very first angle type is called complementary. This is when the sum of the angles, they sum to 90 degrees. So for example, if I have this over here, that's 90 degrees. And let's say I have X over here and this remaining section is 70 degrees. I can then say X plus 70 degrees gives me 90 degrees. So something plus 70 gives me 90. We know that that's 20. So X is 20 degrees. That's called a complementary angle, any angle that sums up to 90 degrees. Complementary angles sum up to 180 degrees. So these are straight lines. So if we have a look at a straight line over here, now that adds up to 180 degrees. And let's say over here is 60 degrees and we have Y here. We can then conclude that Y degrees plus 60 degrees gives us 180 degrees. So Y degrees is 180 minus 60 degrees. So Y degrees is 120 degrees. So that's called a complementary angle. We have a revolution. So a revolution is 360 degrees. So we have a full lap. That's called 360 degrees. That's a revolution. Lucky last, we have vertically opposite angles. So these are angles that are opposite to one another. So A and B, so A degrees and B degrees, they are the same. So if they're vertically opposite, so there's a cross, that means those angles are the same. Let's have a look at an example over here. So I have 30 degrees and then X degrees, Y degrees. First of all, I have an X, I have a cross. So therefore, Y degrees equals 30 degrees. So I found my Y. Now to find my X, there's a straight line. So I could say that Y degrees plus X degrees gives me 180 degrees. I know that Y is 30 because vertically opposite angles are the same. So 30 degrees plus something gives me 180 degrees. So if I subtract 30 from 180, that gives me 150 degrees. So X is 150 and Y is 30 degrees. So remember that vertically opposite angles are always the same. So if there's a cross, they're always the same. We're now having a look at angles in parallel lines. So the very first type of angle we will have a look at is called alternate angles. So over here I have two parallel lines that could be represented with an arrow like this. And I have a line that goes through these two parallel lines. So I'm going to call this A degrees over here and this B degrees. Alternate angles are always the same, so are the same. So what an alternate angle is when we form a Z like this, the inside sections are the same. So these are called alternate angles. So let's have a look at an example. So I have X degrees over here. Sorry, over here I could just say A equals B. I have X degrees here and I have 40 degrees over here. I want to find X. I could conclude that X degrees equals 40 degrees. because these two, x and 40, are alternate angles. All right, the next type of angle we're having a look at is called corresponding angles. So corresponding angles are the same, so they are also equal. So far we had a look at vertically opposite, alternate and corresponding, and all these angles were the same. All right, so over here I have A degrees and over here I have B degrees. So where I have two parallel lines, the section on top are always going to be the same, and likewise the sections at the bottom, so the reds, are going to be the same. So let's go through a few examples. So I have two parallel lines and I have x degrees here and I have 50 degrees here, and I also want to find y. I'm just going to make this a bit more complicated. So first thing first, using my corresponding angles rule, I could conclude that x equals 50 degrees. And using my complementary rule, my supplementary rule, I could conclude that a straight line over here is 180 degrees. So y plus 50 gives me 180 degrees. So y equals 180 degrees minus 50 degrees, which gives me 30 degrees. So therefore x is 50 degrees and y is 130 degrees. That's a corresponding angle. All right, the last type of angle we'll have a look at today is called the co-interior angles. And as the name implies, we're looking at the inside of the angle. So co-interior angles are supplementary angles. So they sum to 180 degrees. Let's have a look. So we have two parallel lines. We're looking at the inside, so we have A degrees and B degrees. So we could conclude that A degrees plus B degrees gives us 180 degrees. That's called the co-interior. Let's have a look at an example. All right, I have 80 degrees here, I have B degrees here. So I can conclude that 80 degrees plus B degrees, since they're both inside the segment, so over here they're inside. We have a C, so C for co-interior, they're inside. So they're supplementary, and when I add them, that should give me 180 degrees. So B equals 180 degrees minus 80 degrees. So B therefore equals 100 degrees. And that is a co-interior angle. Now, lucky last, we will have a look at bisectors, and there are two types of bisectors. There's a perpendicular bisector. Now, this is when two line segments that intersect at 90 degrees angle. So, for example, this over here, that's perpendicular. So let's say this was my line A. My line B is a perpendicular bisector to line A, just intersecting at 90 degrees. All right, my second type of bisector is called an angle bisector. Now, this is when I have a line that intersects or that divides an angle into two equal halves. as the name bi implies that there's going to be two sections and it's going to be equal. So if I have a look at my lovely triangle over here, and it's like A, it's going to be B, that's going to be C. And if I decide to have a bisecting a line like that right in the middle, so that red line is going to be an angle bisector, then I could conclude that A1 and A2, so big A is going to be A1 plus A2 because they're going to be the same, or A1 is going to equal A2. So during this lesson, we had a look at a few things. We had a look at types of angles at a point and also in parallel lines, and we also had a look at bisectors.